This actually comes from TechCrunch, and the headline was 2019 looks to be another lights out year for fintech startups. They summarize it with several predictions, which I thought was interesting. The total aggregate value for fintech unicorns will cross $90 billion US, and the total number of fintech unicorns will begin to close in on 30. The Matrix US FinTech Index, whatever that is, will deliver 200% returns. I'm guessing that's a fund, outperforming incumbents and the S&P 500 by 150%. And there are now 20 FinTech unicorns in the US alone. In fact, there are more FinTech unicorns than any other industry vertical, which I think is particularly interesting. Fintech is hot right now. Do we agree with this? Does that feel right to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, in the UK, we've got 13 unicorns, 5 of which are within the fintech space. So, it's I guess proportionally that's quite a large amount. But the sort of, I don't know if the prediction of going from 20 fintech unicorns to 30 in the US in 1 year, that's quite a big jump.
And it seemed arbitrary.
Yeah, it's sort of like, lick your finger and stick it in the air kind of number. I mean, where they've sort of got that number from. I mean, there are maybe a couple of fintechs that are on the cusp. If you look in the UK, there's not really, I don't think, any that are, maybe Atom Bank. Their last valuation put them at $593 million. That was in March of last year. So if they do another round, potentially they could move into unicorn territory. But I'm not sure, we're going to see huge numbers of fintechs becoming
another
unicorns.
Round with not much launched in between.
I think if you look at this, the FinTech Index Matrix, which sounds very futuristic, you're right, Si. I think this is the top 10 publicly listed fintechs in the States.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the socio-economic, I suppose, environment at the moment in the States, everyone is predicting a bear run on stocks at the moment. So then if you're then looking at, the value of fintechs to go up this much, for them to be 10 new unicorns, this is seriously something that means that this index, however they've done it, I think it's over the 2-year returns to this point is about 133%. That's high. 33% for the top 10 incumbents, which of financial services who aren't fintechs. Like the difference is enormous. Like the growth has been incredible. But against slowing global growth, against everything that's happening in the States at the moment, Donald Trump's tweets, is that sort of a social economic environment actually, going to stop these guys growing? Is there, will that affect fintech in the way that we've seen it potentially affect other businesses?
We do have some listed fintech access in the UK as well that kind of shows the other side of things. We've got Augmentum Fintech and Draper S3, which are both listed VC funds essentially, which Draper S3 has quite a bit of fintech in it. It's a Revolut backer, but Augmentum Fintech focuses solely on our lovely financial services startups. And both of them are doing incredibly well compared to when you look at the wider scope of how fintech has performed as individual stocks, funding circles, IPO, anybody.
If you look back on 2018, it's the year that fintech really grew up and became not only mainstream, but kind of really big and saw its potential. We covered a little bit of this in our episode 281 and 282 as we looked back on 2018 and made our predictions for 2019 as well. But it feels to me like it tis the season for 2019 predictions, and it's an interesting opportunity to kind of reflect on that because you've got Plaid and Circle and Brex and Root and Lending Home, kind of really exciting next generation of these fintech startups. It appears, unlike, I think, sort of the big consumer tech players like your Facebooks and your Googles, that they had this one generation, the golden generation, that then became massive. There hadn't been anything to really challenge them. In fintech, it just seems to be more and more opportunity and more of these coming. It's not, the ones you've got are the ones that are going to be big. It feels like there's a lot out there that's still very much on a growth trajectory.
I agree. I just think that also we have to sort of be mindful of not getting too obsessed with the valuations and actually thinking about the value that these businesses are actually delivering. Obviously totally different sectors, but Blipper, Offer Bike, they're just examples in the last month of, businesses with billion-plus valuations that have gone into administration or gone bankrupt. So, the valuations really, don't mean anything on, they mean something on paper, but until, there's an IPO or a sale, they don't actually materialize. So I think in terms of that maturity and looking forward, what I would like to see, especially to ensure that we have continued investment in the sector, is, more of these businesses starting to actually make money and profits, because that's going to reassure the customer that they're here to stay and reassure investors and actually demonstrate, to the wider market that, fintechs need to be taken seriously.
That Uber model of kind of just take on massive amounts of funding, grow at all costs, and worry about profit later. There have been people that have tried to have done that and failed, and that doesn't appear to be the model that succeeds in fintech. We could be wrong. It works to a point, but at a certain point, you have to flip that to now look
that's
for
also the 1 in a billion business. I mean, that's the Amazon, the Ubers. I mean, these are. I think of all the businesses that have started in the last, since Amazon was founded or since Google was founded. I mean, people kind of use them as a model and say, oh, we're doing that model where we pursue growth at all costs, but they forget that they are really the 1 in a billion, and maybe you are too. But
although flipping that, I do think still inside the incumbents mindset, there's almost the opposite approach, which is this thing's got to have profit in year one, which is unrealistic for a small venture as well. Like there is definitely this kind of almost delivery date obsession inside large organizations that actually smaller organizations don't concern themselves with the delivery date. They concern themselves with delivery quality a lot more. And that as a mindset shift, I think, is a really interesting one to keep an eye on.